Hello everyone, welcome back. We're here at Jigokudani Valley in another Avatar Shogun 2 multiplayer Avatar match-made battle. It's a medium funds battle, and I wasn't really going to show this one, but after some questions came up in the Shogunate YouTube Discord server the other day, I figured I'd put this video together and actually release this one ahead of another couple that I have ready to go. So, like I said, medium funds battle. I've brought a relatively small army compared to my opponents. My opponent's a rank 3. And like I said, I wasn't going to show it until these questions came up, so I figured I would. So this video is going to be a little bit cover a couple topics. One of them is quality of units over quantity. Deciding where to put your quality units, especially when you're on a budget. In some battles, when you play small funds and you're a mid or a higher rank general, you have to be very careful about what units you bring. Now, I will say that I do lose some small funds battles with my rank 10 general. It just happens. I make mistakes and my opponent happens to be really good and takes advantage of them, and that's it. Or they just outright outthink me, outmaneuver me, and are just an overall really good player that just happens to have a low ranking general. So anyways, I try not to put too much stock into the rank system, like the number of stars or chevrons an opponent general has. So like I said, medium funds, and I have my medium fund katana core. So 4 elite or mid-ranking katanas, all at rank 5 or 6. So these are 5 or 6 upgrades I've actually spent on the units. Some of these are rank 9, actual rank 9 for experience, but I've only actually paid for 5 or 6 upgrades, and that's important. So I've got 4 of those. I have 2 Boa Shigaru just for fodder and distractions, and as usual, I have 1 instructional Yari Samurai and 1 fresh Yari Ashigaru somewhere. Yeah, whatever. So he's fresh 1. I also have with me right here 1 light cavalry called Great Guard, just for the fun of it, and 2 fresh Yari Cav. So, like I said, the first thing I want to do whenever I start a battle is I want to look at my opponent's army as quickly as possible. After I start moving, when we were deploying, I said, well, there's almost no way I'm going to be able to get that dojo off the outright because most people are going to move up to capture that dojo, just like I will move up to capture this one. So what I want to do is force my opponent away from that dojo as much as possible. I don't want them to get that dojo. Now, being that my opponent's a rank 3, chances are they'll move their entire army as a blob or as a big formation over to where I move mine to counter my movement, and that's fine. That's kind of what I want them to do. The other thing is, looking at my opponent's army, I'll notice right away my opponent has 4 cavalry units to my 3. In fact, my opponent has no veterans, which can be a thing, especially when you're a rank 3. You might not have all the veterans you would like, so you might have to choose, do I bring an army that's more veterans in one battle and then they're hurt, so they have to take one battle to refresh, and then the next one I bring mostly fresh units. Or my opponent is deliberately trying to get veterans by bringing an entirely fresh army, and my opponent is going, well, it doesn't matter which unit I level up or which unit I get as a veteran. I don't care. I need veterans, and that's how I started. I just said, well, I need veterans because I can see how quality makes a difference. So at this point, it doesn't matter what I get as long as I get veterans. So to that end, my opponent has a Yari Cav and a light cavalry over here, a light cavalry and a Yari cavalry over here. So my opponent has 2 Yari cavalry to mine and 2 light cavalry to my 1, even though mine is a rank 2 veteran. The other thing with my light cavalry that's a veteran is it has upgrades in speed and sight, like enemy spotting. It does not have any upgrades for melee. My opponent also has 3 Boa Shigaru. So the ranged advantage and the cavalry advantage are firmly in my opponent's favor. Where my opponent is at a deficit is with all of these spears and these 3 swords. So my opponent has 5 Yari Samurai and 3 Katana Samurai. I hear that in other Total War games, Spear Infantry are great at frontline units and great at tying down infantry. In Shogun 2, when used properly, Spear Infantry can be, or Spear-based infantry, can be great at tying down opponents when used correctly. So the problem with my opponent's army, though, is that with those 4 veteran katanas are just going to eat right through that line of spears, and they'll eat right through this line of swords. The problem for me, though, is if my opponent decides to encircle me, that is where, and then flank me from the rear, or use my opponent, or my opponent uses their cavalry very well, I do run the risk of being overrun. So also, my general in this battle is still a melee general. I did change him to a leadership just for an experiment shortly after this. But right now he's a melee general. So the general's influence radius is smaller, the anti-fatigue radius is smaller. So I need to be careful how I use my general, and I need to be careful that I don't get surrounded. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to eliminate some of my opponent's advantages as quickly as possible. And then I'm going to make sure that my opponent can't use their superior numbers against me by forcing them to, once I've removed one advantage, they now have to divert infantry, probably spears in this case, away from where I want to do, or from my main infantry line. Sorry. So the other thing too is I'm going to make sure I capture this archery dojo, because I really don't want my opponent with 3 bows to have the archery dojo. It's of little use to me and the style of play I make. I just prefer to have my opponent not have that. So what I'm going to do is to force my opponent's cavalry to not engage. I'm going to put my light cavalry up here, which is pretty good against other cavalry, but I'm going to put my spears on this ridge right over here, so that these 2 cavalry at this end don't have anywhere to go, that they don't have anywhere to attack, which makes it look like my right flank is open, and that's exactly what my opponent does. Shogun 2 is a lot of mind games for multiplayer, so I'm deliberately leaving this flank exposed. I'm deliberately leaving some of my bows exposed, because my opponent probably knows I need to protect against some cavalry. What my opponent should have thought, or should have realized, was I probably have a trap waiting, and it's right here. While my opponent's setting up to attack, I'm going to send these 2 cavalry into the flank, and they're already, like I said, morale's a really big thing in this game. Their bar just dropped from green to yellow, and it's going to drop even further because they can hear the horse hooves of my cavalry, and in they come. So this attack, I've ordered one to attack this one in the rear and one to attack this one in the flank. They sort of just hit both. What I want to make sure I do is delete my opponent's cavalry. All the while I'm using this cavalry just to charge down, charge back, just to push this cavalry back a little bit further. Even though they're light cavalry, I want to push my opponent's cavalry back as much as I can while I get my bows up to start shooting into them. So that's one half of my opponent's cavalry deleted. The other half will be deleted shortly. And in that whole instance, I lost one unit out of here. I'm going to lose a couple more to bow fire. I was trying to make sure I didn't get too close, but it was more important for me to delete my opponent's cavalry. And then over here I've lost 4. So to me that's a fair trade. 2 units for 5, 6, 7 cavalry, that's fine. So I do lose quite a few in those bows. He just has so many bows, and they're they're concentrated into a smaller group. They're not on loose formation, so their killing power is actually, while the area of effect is smaller, their killing power is more concentrated. So what I'm going to do now is move my cavalry over here to keep threatening this edge. So my opponent has to respond by making sure they leave some spears. They are trying to capture the dojo, which is good for them, which is really good what they should be doing. But they're going to have to move this cavalry over here because, to be perfectly honest, that light cavalry is no threat to the swords, or in theory to the bows, because of the spears. So this is the appropriate move. My opponent didn't really do much wrong in this battle. I just made sure I eliminated what I wanted to eliminate. So now my opponent is going to set up again to keep my cavalry away, except my cavalry don't care. And while they're moving and not engaging, because they're actually going to be stationary, and I'm going to engage them from the flanks again. So this one's going to get deleted, this one's going to get deleted as well. At the same time, I'm moving my light cavalry up. They're getting torn to pieces by the bows, but when it comes to... Oh, look at how far those bodies fly. My light cavalry is not there to win me the battle by having the unit left at the end. The light cavalry is typically there because of the charge bonus. And when they pull out, they end up killing almost 20 in this unit. They kill 2 in this unit. And they kill a couple in there. And by the time they get out... I mean, there's been bowfire too, but that charge hit almost 20. And I lost just a few. So, or just about half. So I think it's a fair trade. To be perfectly honest, I think it's a fair trade. The other thing is my opponent's bows are almost useless. I did get our general's in grave danger because there was a stray arrow that fell into the group, but actually what I do with my general next, because he's a melee general and because I'm insane, that's what actually causes more damage to his unit. But these bows, if you look at the path of these arrows, because I have the ridge, or I'm just behind the ridge, these arrows are basically falling flat into the valley as I advance. They're not hitting my units. More than likely, sorry for stopping and starting so much, but more than likely my opponent just has these bows on fire at will. I don't believe that they're necessarily individually ordering them to attack specific units. If I was my opponent, I would have been shooting into these bows. Or had 2 units shoot into the bows, and then 1 unit, or even just 1 unit into the bows, and then 2 units just shoot into my infantry. Probably also would have moved them closer, because now I have a perfect angle for a downhill charge. Oh yeah, and by the way, my opponent's light cavalry is about to be removed. My cavalry is going to both be about half strength, but again, fair trade. 4 units to basically 2 units of mine. That's fine. So the next thing is charge bonuses are extremely important, and even though my Katana Samurai don't have the strongest charges at 15, they're going to get a bonus for charging downhill. Now this is where I almost lost the battle, to be perfectly honest. My general has no penalty against spears, which is why I ran him in, because I'm trying to run him in I'd start running him in to try to stop the bows from firing. And I am wearing the hideous Mempo mask, but these bows just start tearing into me, as well as fire from my own bows. So my opponent, or my general, does not get a great charge. It's a little too late starting it, and I do get surrounded, so my bodyguard's down quite a bit. So if my general had died, this battle very well could have gone the other way. Fortunately, with my elite infantry, I am just going, and the Mempo mask, I am going to delete my opponent's infantry quite quickly. These cavalry are just running around being a nuisance, keeping at least one of his spears away so I have less infantry to fight. Now, I didn't need to bring the Mempo mask. I could have brought another retainer that was a buff to the rest of my units. Yeah, and my bows are just shooting into the mass. When I'm running with my melee general, in a medium battle, I do normally bring the hideous Mempo mask, which is a legendary item. I bring it because I know I'm going to be facing numbers, and frequently I'm facing someone who brings a few veteran units, or many, because their general is lower ranked, they can they cost less, they can bring more units. So because of the fact that I'm facing numbers, I do want to make sure that I can use every advantage available to me. In small battles, I can't bring the Mempo Mask because I need to bring other retainers to allow me to afford to bring the infantry, because having only 5,000 funds with an 1,800 Koku general means you have your army composition is entirely different. So anyways, so that's the battle. I hope you guys enjoyed. It was one of those where, for the most part, I feel I had it under control, but at the same time, it was one where I could have lost just based on the slightly reckless use of my melee general. But the biggest thing to take away from this is make sure that when you bring an army, if you can bring a few veterans, bring them. If you have veterans available, bring them. Because quantity does not always make up for quality, as you saw in this battle here. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed, and hope this was helpful, and we'll see you around.